Hi, good morning, everybody. I seem to always be making apologies for being late, so I'm very sorry once again for being late. But today we have a very important segment, and we have two persons here with us today. Ray seems to be one of our popular visitors. She was here just last week, and she's back with us again. And we have Josephine Whitehead, who is an attorney at law, and she is also one of the six founders of Help and Shelter. And today we will be talking about sexual predators in the school system and how they would have been protected by the system. Now, one of the things, how this came about was due to the case of Coen Jackson from Bishop's High School. And it came about due to a Facebook post made by Coen Jackson accusing him of engaging in sexual grooming with some of his students. Now, the thing with, I don't think a lot of people understand what sexual grooming really is, and they're making a lot of excuses about the situation. So that's why one of the reasons I have Josephine here, who actually worked on the Sexual Offences Act, and though she says she doesn't remember quite so much, she's been talking a lot about it, and I think that she remembers enough to be helpful to this conversation. So, Josephine, with regards to the Sexual Offences Act, Section 18 specifically, it speaks to grooming, right?
No, grooming is Section 13.
Section 13.
I have to say, actually, how impressed I am that so many people who have been commenting on this matter are familiar with the Sexual Offences Act.
I was familiar with
they've been quoting sections. There was the letter, maybe you'll raise it later, from 50 former students of Bishop's High that is published in the press this morning, basically supporting the students at Bishop's and any other students. And they quoted the section that talks about obstructing a prosecution by basically telling somebody you should not give a statement. So they quoted that. So that's very good. So obviously, you not only need legislation, but you need people to know about the legislation and to know what to do. So I have to say I'm very pleased about that, because it does show that at least some of the sensitization work that was done, not only by the ministry but by NGOs like Red Thread and Help and Shelter has borne fruit. But it is Section 13. Well, grooming it basically means the same, as in the usual, how you normally talk about grooming. You groom yourself, you're getting ready for something, right? So, and often I think it can be in person or it can be over the internet. So you make contact, a man makes contact with a child over the internet, that tends to be maybe a teenager, and gets to know her and so on, and makes her feel good, and all of this is preparatory to then meeting this girl. And it could be the other way around, it could be same sex, whatever, to meeting her and having sex or having her engage in sex with somebody else. So it's basically you groom somebody. Like you groom a horse, you groom yourself. You're getting ready for, well, I won't say literally the kill, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So it is a very, very serious offence, because there have been not so much here, but in other countries where men would groom young girls and then would travel over the world, other side of the world, to actually meet them, so as to be able to sexually exploit them. So, but that's what Joel has said. This chap has been doing at the schools or in schools, and has been doing it over a long period of time.
Now, one of the concerns one of the things, Ray, is do schools have a code of ethics? Because I asked Josephine this question, but she wasn't quite sure. I think it should be mandatory that all schools have a code of ethics.
I can't speak for every single school, But in where I've worked as an educator, there is a teacher handbook that speaks towards your conduct in school, outside of school. And then there is that just morality attached to, student-teacher relationships. You export in terms of professionalism, but also as well under the concept that any information that comes to you, the child is protected in such a sense. But for me, I don't know if every teacher works in that sense, but for me, my student is my student. My student remains my student even after they would have graduated. As such, they're off limits, for me to use a term like that. I explore a number of practices within my own classroom situation. Has to do with being in rooms with students, ratios. I try very hard not to be in closed situations with, any student. We're highly visible. Anyone can walk in. Unless it's a situation whereby a child is giving me information that is personal, but even so, it is highly visible in the sense that people could see us, but not hear us in that sense. But those are my personal practices. But the schools do have codes of ethics. But I think the one you're specifically talking about is probably going to come down to morality issues. What is off limits? Who is off limits? And for me, I often tell my students when I meet them outside, I look at my students in terms of, oh my goodness, I've been in this profession so long that you have managed to get married and have children, and in my head, you're still this little boy or this little girl that I taught, so many moons ago. And even last night, one of my students commented on a post regarding this matter, and I said, oh my goodness, you were among the batch of my first students, and I'm so proud of you because, watching you grow up. And another student chimed in and said, but miss, I was your baby student too. And I said, but you didn't like me very much. And we had this back and forth. He said, but you're still my favorite teacher. But even in that conversation, I'm looking at these children and I'm thinking, when did I get so old? I'm meeting you socially. Even socially, I don't socialize with my students, so to speak. If we meet up at social functions, hi, how are you? They might say things, but you will not see me having drinks with them. Not that I drink, but you will not see me socializing with them in club.
Because the line can be very easily lost when you
So in terms of an ethics code, yes, there is. And I think that falls in professionals for every single stretch that you can think of. But that morality clause is always there. Your student is your student. And I think a lot of my colleagues operate, at least I would hope they operate under that measure, that whether they're of legal age or whatever, in that sense, no. Your students are your students. They will forever be your students.
Yeah.
So in terms of ethics, yes.
I think that is so important though, because when you're thinking about it, these are children, these are persons that go into an institution with the desire to learn, and then they're being taken advantage of by their teachers. Now,
of course, if I can just cut in, that of course is why you have the section in the Sexual Offences Act about abusing a position of trust, and obviously it includes a teacher.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm so familiar with this act is because I remember when we moved the marital consent age, so to speak, from 13 to 16, I kept saying, but people kept saying to me, oh, it's linked to the Marriage Act. And so I went looking. For me,
you mean the age of consent?
Right. And so I went looking at it because I wanted to see how it would handle persons in positions of trust. So when the subsection started to pop up, and I remember reading and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, this has massive implications for teachers. As a young girl growing up, you heard the rumors. You heard this teacher is with that child, and you heard it. And
I think everybody has heard those rumors.
Yes,
because I know 5 people
it's become so normalized that I remember saying to a parent, we have to guard against certain things. You can't just assume that the teacher is in a position of yes, you trust them, but build a relationship with that teacher. Especially we're spending the bulk of the time with your kids. Build a relationship, not only that the child trusts the teacher, but you trust the teacher as well. With the proliferation of lessons all over the place, teachers become very popular by virtue of how many children are going through their lessons. But how many parents know the actual lessons teacher? How do you know that this person is what you're hearing? You know, do you just drop your child off and then you come back for them, or does your child go by themselves? And then, you know, after you get to a certain age, absolutely. But for me, my knowledge of the Sexual Offences Act was geared, I wanted to see how it would impact classrooms and how not only male teacher, female students would be impacted, but also even for females, because sometimes we forget that we think that it's only males that could do this kind of thing. So,
sorry to cut you, Ray, but only just this morning I was talking with one of my friends, and he used to go to one of the popular high schools in Georgetown, and he was telling me that during his time, he knew of female students who would also be engaging in sexual activities with their students. So, female teachers, would be engaging in sexual activity with their students. So it definitely does happen.
Yeah, it does. Let's not, at no point in this conversation should we ignore the fact that positions of power, male or female, can be exploited. So in that sense, when we're having this national conversation, we need to have this conversation in a kind of not gearing or so that men feel that we're attacking them or we're after male teachers, but that we're talking about positions of trust and how easily they're abused, one, and two, how can we safeguard our children? So much so that over the years, we've heard a number of things like, the very first question I saw when all of these accusations came out was, well, why didn't they say anything? And my brain went to, well, this is exactly why they didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Because they knew exactly how you would react. We're victim blame. We talk about what people wear and all of these things. And this is why people have kept this hidden for 15 and 16 years and not said anything. And then one person comes out and says something,
and then everybody comes out. You hear the story.
Yes, because at this point, people are thinking, well, if this person is brave enough to talk, I can too. But again, we come back. And it has distressed me as a teacher in this. I can tell you I've lost sleep over this story. From Friday when all of the posts started coming, I'm saying, oh my God, the one place that I was pretty sure, or I hoped I was sure would be a safe place for students, for children. Now, my whole concern with this is reporting in the future. What happens when we find someone else, or someone else is accused of this kind of thing? Are students going to take this case as an example and say, you know what, I'm not saying anything? And then we perpetuate it over and over again, we keep going with it, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
But I'd rather investigate a case, a child comes to me, and I find it to be false in that sense, than stand and dismiss an accusation. I think. Of course, at that point, you kind of have to weigh, I don't even want to say the credibility, you have to kind of weigh
because we have a lot of credible predators and criminals
in that sense. So I'd rather not go the route of jumping out right off the bat and say, you know what, you're fronting, you put yourself up on that teacher, you know, I've had to say things to you about how you dress and how you talk and how you speak. I'd rather say to that child, listen, you brought an accusation, we will investigate it. And then if there's credible information to move forward, we pass it on to the relevant authorities. But I do not want to create a scenario where children are afraid to say to persons or persons mandated to report. Because I don't care how you look at it, teachers are mandated reporters. Abuse, sexual assault, any such evidence, we are mandated reporters. Our aim is not to penalize our colleagues, but our aim is to ensure that the children who are here are safe and they feel safe. Students are under attack all over the world. Outside, they're in homes, everywhere. There has to be a safe space for students. And it has got to be the place where they spend the bulk of their hours in. That's just my personal opinion, mind you. Not speaking for the entire teaching profession. That's just me.
No, for those of you, Now, for those of you now joining us and you need some context, what prompted this conversation today was allegations against a Bishop's High School teacher, Coen Jackson, of sexually grooming students as they approach the age of consent. Now, one of the things that's interesting about Coen's behavior, and I've actually spoken to some of the victims myself. After the story broke, I even had one mother come into my inbox and tell me that her daughter had been a victim of his, and she would have taken this to the school and nothing was done. Now, as I was saying, when the age of consent was 13, what Coen did, or alleged to have done, that was be specific, yes, alleged to have done was target persons when they are now approaching the age of consent and begin grooming them for sexual behavior, for sexual activity, sorry. Now, as Josephine said, under section 13, I'm confused to under section 13, this is criminal. Now, one thing I wanted you to share with the audience, Josephine, was with regards to section 8 and how the sentencing. One of the things you were explaining to me earlier was that only if there's penetration, then you get life sentences.
Well, that is the the penalty for meeting a child under 16 years following sexual grooming is on summary conviction, and that's on conviction in the magistrate's court, not before a jury. $1 million and 5 years in prison. If it's on indictment, which is in the High Court and before a jury, imprisonment for 10 years. That's for the meeting for sexual grooming. The abuse of a position of trust, that carries a higher penalty in that if it involved sexual penetration, then on conviction on indictment, it could be imprisonment for life. If in any other case, summary conviction, $1 million, 5 years, and on conviction on indictment, 10 years. So they're fairly stiff.
I think the severity of this alone should tell people how serious of a crime this is, because when you have people in positions of trust and you're dealing with children, it's very easy for them to be manipulated and taken advantage of. So that's why it's very important. Now, we have a question for you, Josephine. Andre Gonzalez wants to. Can the respondent, if charges are laid, ask for a change of venue given the publicity?
You can ask for a change of venue, but I'm not sure in Guyana where your change of venue would be.
Is this one of those situations whereby the sexual assault court, I hope I'm quoting that correctly,
new sexual offences
would that, given the kind of ability to testify away from your accused, testified blank screen in that sense, testified another room. Would that cover?
Well, I would have thought that any charges brought, but they would go to the sexual offences court. Now, the court itself is in the High Court compound in Georgetown. I don't know if they are going to equip similar courtrooms in Berbice and in Essequibo, where the High Court sits occasionally. But I mean, as I said, Guyana is such a small place.
Yeah.
I don't know where you would get a change of venue to. Because I know that in other countries people ask for a change of venue because of the publicity, so they want to go where people will not have read in the media about the matter. But I don't think it would be possible here.
That's kind of, I'm sorry, I thought I would be able to get the comments from my phone, but I'm not being able to see it, so I'm just gonna have to scroll and readjust. If you can send your comments directly to my inbox, that would be better, because sometimes what live feeds do is they tend to filter out some of the comments, so I may not be able to see some of them. Now, one of the questions being asked is, why only one teacher is being singled out, and what about the others in the system? That is a valid question, but here's the thing.
Well, you need to have reports. You need
Exactly.
to have credible reports, people coming forward. You need to be able to preferably have something that backs up those reports. And so this is the one. Quite often, everybody knows that somebody is doing something, has been doing something for years, but you have to say you need more than. I mean, I know it is difficult when in dealing with sexual offences, and we've had this issue in relation to evidence in sexual offence cases, but it helps that you get, written statements, you get maybe something else to back that up. So it's not enough to say, well, everybody knows that X has done it. You say, well, then bring me something that, on which I can use to follow up, to make a report, to ensure that it is investigated. Now, I mean, it's perhaps the same with this as it has been with the scandals in the US with Harvey Weinstein, and it only took one.
Yeah.
And so many others. I mean, the latest Charlie Rose, and that cuts across entertainment, business, the media, because victims have seen that, after years of being disbelieved, there is now a greater willingness to believe them. People are more willing to come forward. It's the same thing with rape. The vast majority of rape matters are not reported because there is just distrust in the police. I mean, we've had instances of women going to the police to report a rape and being raped at the police station. And have been instances of that. So there's distrust in the police, there's distrust in the system. It is to be hoped, now that we have better legislation and we have a hopefully fit for purpose sexual offences court, that things will improve.
That brings me to another thing that's been bugging me about this entire scenario. What we're having now is this kind of attack on the whistleblowers, so to speak.
Yeah.
And questions about their credibility. And Josephine, you raised a very interesting point for me, in the sense, if victims, well, survivors at this point, don't want to, or can't, or don't feel comfortable reporting to, let's say, the police, reporting to all of these agencies designed to protect them because of these same scenarios that have played out over and over again, at which point do we draw a line, so to speak, between listening first, which I think a lot of people did not, their emotions got into play. They were either for or against. At this point, it literally became you either believed or you didn't. And I remember when the details started to come out, my skin started to go, because it was, every case is starting to sound similar. A pattern is emerging. And it's a pattern emerging over a large period of time, and a pattern emerging over a large number of places.
Exactly.
And that is what I kept looking at as patterns, and I couldn't understand why nobody else was seeing these patterns. And so it boiled down to, suddenly it became with the credibility of the whistleblower, and I think whistleblower for obvious reasons, and his own past or future or whatever. And, like today I saw somebody said he's being less than credible about his relationship. And for me, I'm trying to equate the credibility of the whistleblower. How did it become about the whistleblower
It's a diversion tactic.
Yeah, it's a diversion. Deflection. That's what you do. You either cast, you cast doubt on the survivors, and that is, well, I think that would perhaps the least popular thing he could do. Or you cast doubt on the person who has brought this up and try and find some way. And Roy Johnson is a well-known person, and I'm sure lots of people maybe may have things that they can say about him. So he's probably a good target for somebody, and that's what people do. Attack is the best form of defense.
Yeah, and we need to remember that this man was teaching for 20 years. That's 2 decades. He taught across several schools, and in most of the schools so far, persons would have come forward and talked about their experiences with him, and there aren't really. I remember that even in my own, I've been to several schools, but in each of them, I knew persons that would have. It was said that they liked little girls. That's a popular colloquialism.
Yeah.
Oh, this teacher liked little girls. I remember at one of the schools I went to, business school, they had 2 teachers there. Incidentally, Coen used to teach at that school. Yeah, so they had 2 teachers there aside from Coen, who students were very afraid of them because they were known to be sexual predators. And the thing is that the owner of this school also has been accused of being a sexual predator. You had young girls going into his office during school hours, and it was very apparent what was happening, but nobody talked about it because it had become so normalized. And we just thought those relationships were normal.
No, so we still think those relationships are normal. We have situations whereby there's a massive age difference between, couples, and I think
but this isn't even necessarily about the age difference between couples. These aren't couples. This is a student and a teacher.
You see, it's so normalized that it's moved from massive age differences between couples to massive age differences between, in any situation. So it's a normalization that's freaking me out, and the fact that the other thing that's freaking me out is the whole concept of, but they're a good teacher, or they're good teachers.
Good teachers don't rape people, they don't sexually harass them, they don't prey on them. They don't do that. Good teachers teach. I've had good teachers. The only thing they do, they told me I was lazy, I needed to work more. That was it. They taught me what I needed to be taught. I don't understand why people continue equating and try to divert the
A friend of
conversation.
mine said that our pensions for grade 1s will get us emotional trauma and lots of STDs.
That's terrible. That is terrible.
I mean, she was laughing in that sense when she said it. But it struck me as a lot of what we afford the concept of a good teacher as a defense, so to speak, is based on our ability to get a student a grade 1.
So you give them latitude, basically.
Yes. You make those excuses.
Results.
Yes.
Don't worry about the
right. This is a good teacher because this teacher gets a number of grade 1s. And so anything pops up, that can't be right. I want to think it's the disbelief that someone so well dressed and well spoken and well educated is a predator in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that latitude scares me because I wonder what else it is hiding, what else it is masking that I think we've just hit the top of that iceberg. I think
it definitely is just the top. Because as I said, like almost everybody I know knows at least one person or more than one person that do things like these.
Well, hopefully now, people will be more prepared to come forward and more will come out.
Josephine, I have a question for you again. Does the Sexual Offences Act 2010 speak to online solicitation of a student or minor?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's online. It includes online grooming because it also covers going to meet children elsewhere in the world. It's not only local. Of course, that's a lot of it, as I think I mentioned at the beginning, is online grooming.
Okay, so that answers the
so you're
question.
masquerading as being somebody other than you are, to get, say, a teenager interested, and then you basically reel them in and then go and meet them. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I came here because I wasn't being able to see some of your comments. Now, one of the concerns that many people have is the way in which this story was kind of brought out. And I wonder, Josephine, if, there seems to be no due process. That's one of the concerns. And I wonder if this can affect the case legally. The fact that it was just put out there on social media without the police being informed or certain agencies.
Because legally speaking, if the allegations are found to be true as a result of the various investigations, then he will be charged, there will be a trial.
But can this make it harder to try the case?
And this, I suppose, relates to the thing about the venue. Because he has said that he's been tried and convicted by the media, or in the media. But this is, once you have social media, you have an uncensored, largely uncensored internet. It happens. It happens to so many. It happens to so many people. Online bullying, allegations, and so on. So it would not, in my view, affect the legal outcome. If he did it, he's guilty. He should be punished. And due process, often people have, and it's the same as I mentioned with rape matters. It's having confidence in the due process.
Confidence in the due process.
You had mentioned, I have confidence in the process that it's not due at all. And you had mentioned your friend said that her daughter had been a victim and that she had been to the school board. And the school board...
Well, not the school board, she said the school. She wasn't specific.
She had done, what a concerned parent should do. First stop is the school, and the school apparently let her down. And the Protection of Children Act, Section 7, duty to report, where a person has direct information that a child is or may be in need of protective intervention, with a typo in the act. The person shall immediately report the matter to the director of the Child Care and Protection Agency, a probation officer, or police officer. That's what Rule did. Did we have direct information?
Direct information from the victims?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
we had direct information into that. And a child is a person under 18. So anybody under 18, if you have direct information that a child is in need of protection, you are required under the Protection of Children Act to make a report.
Yeah, but that is one of the concerns, is that it was just, the information was just placed on social media. So before certain things were put in place.
What I understood from the timeline was that he made contact with the HM. I'm pretty sure I saw him, might have been last evening. He made contact with the HM prior to, and if I am not mistaken, I also saw a snippet, like a screenshot of a conversation, or I think it was an email that he had with someone else might have been the protection agency, querying certain things. For me, we're getting into...
Doesn't mean that you're under an obligation to make a report. It doesn't mean that you can't also take to social media. If you are, there's nothing to say you can't do anything else. And often, going to social media is really the only way of getting results.
And that is kind of sad, that you have to make it so public for your
action. I don't know. I'm not, familiar, or I don't know what the timeline was, what happened first, second.
I have to go back to but I do remember he was addressing the issue of why did he choose social media. And if I remember the dates, it might have been earlier in the month where he would have.
I don't know. But I mean, so many.
He did address it though.
These protests, when people take to the streets, because things are not happening the way they want with the authorities in the way that they should. I mean, the Child Care and Protection Agency is woefully under-resourced in many ways. I don't know whether in the budget day next Monday, whether they will get more resources so that they can employ more and more qualified and better skilled people. I don't know, but so many of the government agencies are under-resourced.
So,
And I think that's why it's important for people to be cognizant of certain things and to actually make reports when they see something. Because if we just keep waiting on the victim to come forward, I think you need to speak to the victim and ensure that they're comfortable with it. But I think we also need to be able to call out predatory behavior when we see it, especially when it comes in schools. If you have rumors that a teacher is being sexually inappropriate with your students, then that should be investigated, right?
I think we're going to be talking about an entire cultural change. Because
this phrase comes up a lot in our conversations.
We are dealing with, let's even go to the fact where persons don't even understand what sexual grooming is in general. So that's one.
There's a belief that the students wanted it. Even if it was consensual,
yes.
That's not.
In addition to that, people have to understand the concept of duty of care. As an adult, you have a duty of care to ensure that every minor in your care at any point in time is taken care of, protected, all of these things. And I think we've got to start with those little attitude changes, which will first ensure that when someone comes forward, whether it's now, whether it's 15 years from now, whether it's 20 years from now, we listen and we say, okay, we will investigate. Our first response should never, ever be, oh, you're a fronting little girl, you wanted it. And that has been the cry from Friday to now, all of the comments. They don't believe it. I saw one commentator say something to the effect of, why did she go to the teacher's house? Did she know that that was it? She didn't want to work hard. I'm thinking, wow, this person didn't even read this article. They just commented. They have skin. But it's things like that for me that skew the real issue. The issue is whether or not these allegations are true. If they've come at us at a very fast pace, and when I say are true or not, I mean for it to be proven in a court of law. Whether or not where the issue is. Why did it move? And we had this conversation last week. Why did it move from proving these accusations to the credibility of the whistleblower, to the credibility of the victims? Because what it's doing is also damaging the teaching profession. Because every single male teacher will be looked at in that term. Every single female teacher that didn't defend a student or behaved in a certain manner towards a student is also their credibility is also. So let us not believe that we're sitting here and I'm not involved in it and therefore it doesn't affect me. It affects you. It affects your credibility. It affects the credibility of the profession. It affects the credibility of the teacher to be able to say to a student, I believe you. I know you would not bring, well, I mean, there are instances where people bring accusations that are not true. But I have a duty of care and I want to ensure that that duty of care is exercised. And so I will investigate.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we want. That when a child comes forward, we investigate. We either disprove the accusations or we prove it and we take it on to the next level. But our first response or our general response cannot be, there's a little fronted little girl and therefore, yeah, she looked for it. Why she put herself in a situation in a lab, why she did this and why they did that. And they're all trying to bring this, the teacher down. And they
shame the school.
Yes, and shame the school. No, that cannot be our approach at any moment for me.
You know what? Yesterday we had a protest action outside of Bishop's High School, where we called for the removal of Winifred Ellis, the headmistress of the school. This was because after the allegations about Coen would have broke it, one of the first responses we got was in the response of Winifred. She held a school assembly where what she did was victim blame, slut shame, and basically condemn the students for not coming to the defense of their teacher. I think when we have a head teacher in a senior school telling students that there are male teachers around and that they should close their legs and that they're loose, when we tell them things like this, we create a very, very dangerous, well, not create, we further perpetuate a very dangerous environment in which victims feel like they can't come forward. And we actually had her in a school line telling victims to come forward if you got anything. Has she ever met a victim of sexual assault or abuse in any way? It's very, very hard to talk about, and nobody would want to come out in public in a school assembly and talk about something like that. And so we were there yesterday and we were calling for her removal. And in fact, I think the protest just ended. I really wish I could have been there today, but of course we had to do this. But what happened yesterday, it was kind of surprising because I felt like so many of the students felt like it was a joke. And we even had a counter protest where students had their placards. Yeah, they had their placards. Yeah, they had placards saying things such as think of our future and our HM did not fail us. Now, as I said before, and I'll say again, the reason why we were there and why we were there again today was because we do care about your future. We care about you being in a safe learning space, and we want to make sure that you continue to be safe. And if things like this happen, we want to make sure that you feel safe enough to come forward with your stories to be believed. And Ray, you made a point just now that I want to address. When it comes to false accusations, right? The victim is never quite believed, and that's because nobody, whenever it comes to these cases, and there might have been a false allegation in one instance, this is usually blown out of proportion, and they'll be like, "Oh, look, you see, all women does lie, all them lie."
One of the enduring rape myths.
Yeah, that victims lie.
The victims lie about being raped, and there was I've forgotten what they call it. There used to be an evidentiary requirement that there had to be some corroborating evidence. You couldn't just believe that the person who claimed that she had been raped. There had to be something else. And that is something which was addressed in the sex offences legislation. And I have to say, I mean, we have good legislation. We've got good sexual offences legislation now, although the implementation was stymied by the former acting Chief Justice in a number of decisions. We have good child protection legislation. We've got fairly good domestic violence legislation. The problem is getting these implemented. It's having people aware of what the legislation does, what they need to do in terms of the same. Everybody is under a duty to report if they see a child who is in need of intervention.
Everybody.
Everybody. Everybody.
Yeah. So it makes everybody a mandated reporter, not just persons in position.
Where a person has, doesn't say what
profession
position the person has to be in. Where you report it to the base, well, probably the best place is Child Care Protection Agency. But
yeah, that was
on their ability to respond, which again is a matter of resources. So it's an uphill struggle, basically.
One of the questions is, if someone feels that they can't talk to someone at the school or parent, who can they go to next? What is the next step?
Well, they could go to, for example, Help and Shelter, where we have counsellors. We could assist them, and our counsellors would talk to anybody, and that would be we have unbreakable, well, not unbreakable, there are certain circumstances, but the general rule of confidentiality, so anybody can come and, speak to us, tell us, and the counsellors will then help them decide what to do.
Now,
and can even intervene, help intervention on their behalf.
Yeah, when it comes to protecting victims, I think we fail in so many ways. And I think, we have the sexual, what's the name of the court?
It's not sexual offences court.
Sexual offences court. I really hope that I hope that this brings a positive change in the way in which we address sexual abuse allegations and stuff like that. And I hope it kind of speeds up the process of getting people charged if they're guilty. Now, Ray, you've been a teacher for 19 years. Now, during all your 19 years, have you ever come across any rumor or allegation that any teacher you might have known or something like that would have been engaged in this kind of activity?
I have. I've known of 3 instances, heard as well. It was dealt with it was investigated, that much I can tell you, and in 2 instances I know that the staff members were not on staff anymore. Ultimately, however, I've heard other rumors, not necessarily with colleagues or anything like that, and it just seems to be a big joke. But it's so pervasive that I think every single teacher in every single school has probably heard, or known, or know, or have known of a situation where it's happened. Because I think when you talk to lay people on the street, they also have experiences.
Everybody has a story. Everybody has a story.
Sense. Oh, I heard, or oh, I saw, and that was the part that got me. You saw, and but then again, I realized I can't put the burden of duty on minors. They saw, they don't understand what grooming is, they don't understand anything. And they make what it becomes is a big joke until it gets trickled down to the staff or somebody, and by that point, the parents don't want to talk about it, the child doesn't want to talk about it, and there's very little you can do. So we've got to create a kind of culture whereby survivors are taken seriously. They're willing to go. They know all of the areas that they can go to make reports, and that they have the confidence that it will be treated with the strictness of, in terms of confidentiality that it needs, as well as the fact that you will get, even if it's it's proven untrue later, it is dealt with in such a manner that other persons coming afterwards, maybe with a credible story, but they get taken seriously.
We need to put our systems in place if we're serious about tackling the issue of predators in our school system. And as I said before, it is a very, very common problem. I alone know of 5 people during my education who would have been known to have been engaging in sexual relationships with their students. That's just me. I am one person, and I know 5. So that's just to show the extent of the problem.
I've heard of 3.
So that's 8 people right here between the 2 of us. Now, earlier I had gotten a question from Ferlin Pedro that I wanted to ask you, Josephine. And before I ask you the question, we've been getting complaints that your voice is too low, so they can't really hear you. Clear the throat. And then, okay, so a lot of the reports that have been cut, well, not reports exactly, but we've been seeing a lot of screenshots and stuff like that where victims have been coming forward and we have people talking about it online. Now, one of the questions Ferlin asked was whether this kind of anecdotal testimony can undermine the legitimacy of those coming forward.
Sure, I'm not quite sure what he means.
I think he means, at least if I understand correctly.
So if somebody is talking about it on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, and then they say,
because of how easily it is to create like fake profiles and stuff.
Okay. Well, obviously, yes, it is, and you can create a fake profile. You can make it
and prejudice.
An allegation against somebody, and then you post that on Facebook. All of that is a matter basically of for investigation. If it is found that somebody has, but this goes back to then lying about having been a victim. Pardon? Does this go back to people claiming that they?
No, that's not what he's saying. What he wants to know is that because of how easily it is to kind of create false profiles and stuff on Facebook, when we have these screenshots and information being put out in the public, whether that can be damaging to charging Coen properly. Because,
No, it shouldn't, because the police should deal with actual evidence, not simply what somebody put up there, or what's just been posted up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think so.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I wanted to address was that I saw so many people, and it was disturbing how I saw so many people. I even see a few people on this post right here talking about the motivations behind the breaking of this story. Personally, I don't care about the motivations behind the story. I care that the story came out because the story came out now and victims are feeling safer to come forward. And because the stories are now out, he won't be able to do this, hopefully, again. We really need the system to work this time, guys. And so I was really worried about them because one of the most common responses among people was that the person who was Johnson, who would have made the story known, would not have should have made the media aware that it was his current girlfriend who would have been one of the victims of Coen. Now, you are not entitled to people's stories. You're not entitled to anything. Persons will come out with their stories when they feel. You need to understand that experiences such as this are very, very difficult. If you're not going through something like this, then you can't necessarily understand the depth of it and how hard it is to talk about it. I was sexually molested, and even though I talk about it sometimes, it's still kind of hard for me to speak about it. So we need to be very careful in the way in which we frame certain things, because when we begin with these questions and these insinuations, what they do is they tend to try to delegitimize all the claims that are coming forward. And this is not just one person. And even if it was just one person, that doesn't matter. Their claims are valid.
I think, as Josephine said earlier, it's a deflection.
Definitely it's a deflection.
You deflect and you cast blame or you cast aspersion, and then it makes people stop and think, okay, no, this person is incredible. For me, I agree with you, Paul. I didn't care what were the motivations for conduct. What I cared about was how it would be dealt with and how it would impact future cases, because we know this is not the only such case where such allegations have been made. Mm-hmm. How we deal with it going forward is now what interests me. How do we ensure that future cases are debated on merit, in that sense, investigated on their merits or lack thereof, if the evidence prove otherwise, but that we have created a safe enough space in our schools, in our society, everywhere, where children, any kind of situation, feel safe enough to report, or even before that, we create situations where children are able to identify that something is wrong, this is wrong. I mean,
talking to your children is so important.
Yes. I mean, like an aunt of mine said to me recently on a post, she said, I tell my children all the time, nobody holds you, nobody touches you, nobody looks at you. And I'm thinking, people say, I crack a joke often on my Facebook as a status, and I say, I cut you from my children. People think I'm joking, but I'm not. I'm probably, and I know for a fact that is going to get me. I'm going to be very emotional, and I'm probably going to act out of character for me. But our children don't recognize when they're being groomed. They don't understand that adults are not supposed to approach them in such a manner. And then, of course, we get the little incidents from, he said not to say anything, or they will do this to this person. And so from a very small age, we see that kind of grooming, to use it in the other sense, coming up. And then, of course, there is the fact that we love our boys and we raise our girls
to fit a certain mold.
Girls shouldn't be they should be seen and not heard. They need to speak quietly. They shouldn't be loud. They shouldn't this. And then the flip side is boys will be boys.
Well, I think we need, rising up from what you said, we need to do a lot of work needs to be done in schools, with students, with parents, with teachers, and with PTAs, so that you can basically telling students what to look out for, what is and what is not acceptable. The same with the parents, so that teachers can look out for, and this relates not only to sexual abuse, but domestic abuse. Mm. Because that is also a dreadful problem. Yeah. The number, I don't know how many women have been killed so far this year. Never mind those who've been badly injured, traumatized.
We had one just 2 days ago.
So there needs to be a lot of work, a lot of sensitization and awareness and training in every school, and the resources need to be made available to do that by qualified people.
Yeah, everything Josephine said, completely agree with. And I just want to expand on the point that you guys really need to talk to your children. Talking to your children is important. I know you may have reservation about broaching sexual topics. You might feel uncomfortable, but just think that you can save your child a lot of emotional and physical trauma if you just talk to them. I have a 5-year-old. I've been talking to her about her body since she was 3. If somebody touches her, she would be able to tell me because she's able to identify that this is wrong or this is right. She's able to identify. So it's very important that we talk to our children and let them know what is up. Now, we have a question here. What are we doing to prevent our senior headmistresses and other school administration officers from reacting negatively towards future sexual misconduct allegations?
I don't know how we can.
I'm not sure about this question.
Well, you can make sure that they're properly trained so that they would not react in the way that Miss Ellis acted. So that's the first thing. You try and prevent by ensuring that they're properly trained, properly screened, and then, well, that's not prevention, that's cure. If it comes up, as with the case of Miss Ellis, that it is adequately dealt with. And doesn't, you need to send the right messages about things like these.
When I listened to that recording, there were so many emotions going on there because I could not understand how a head teacher could be just so callous in the face of allegations against sexual predation in our students. Your job there is to protect and create a safe environment, a safe learning space. And when you automatically just erode their integrity and stuff like that, then that's really something. And the Bishop's School Board, I was told, I was very reliably informed, that the Bishop's School Board had a meeting where they would have discussed these allegations against Coen Jackson. And one of the points that was raised was somebody called for the firing of Winifred Ellis. And it was suggested that they wait until an investigation is done by the ministry. My question is why? The main reason why we're calling for her removal is based on her response to the allegations. That does not, I don't see what an investigation necessarily has
nothing to do with whether the allegations against Coen Jackson are true or false. Her response stands by itself. I don't think anything else is needed.
Yeah. So that was just very, very disturbing. We've been here for an hour. This has been our longest and fastest session. But yeah, when it comes to sexual predation, I think it's very important that when we see it, we're able to recognize and call it out and not allow it to thrive as it has been done in so many schools. And it's just so sad how many schools it actually goes on in. And we need to hold those responsible. We need to make sure that they're held responsible by the law. And if there are those who are protecting them, we need to also ensure that those persons are held accountable. Because if you create an environment in which you are protecting abusers, then you are complicit in their acts. You are the one who is saying, hey, this is okay for that to happen, right? So it's very important that we weed out sexual abusers and we weed out those who protect them. Now, this has been a really great and informative session. We haven't got any more questions so far, so I think that we can wrap this up for now. And maybe at a later date, when this thing has been properly dealt with, we'll come back and just kind of go over some more things. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your comments and your questions. And thank you, Josephine, for being here. Thank you, Ray. Ray had to rush down. Ray had to rush down to be here. I'm thankful for them both. So I'll see you guys next week.